Meet Amanda Sullivan, someone who has been through the reality of hearing the words, "Your child has cancer." At the age of 1 year, her daughter Izzy was diagnosed with a germ cell yolk sac tumor. But instead of letting that pain define her, Amanda has turned it into purpose. Today, as a nonprofit executive, childhood cancer advocate, and community builder, she pours her heart into making a difference, not just for her family, but for countless others walking the same difficult road.
You're listening to Act to Impact with Brandi DeVries. Through heartfelt stories of resilience, hope, and community, I share my personal experience as a longtime advocate and fundraiser for the national nonprofit Children's Cancer Research Fund. Invite pediatric cancer families to tell their stories and highlight individuals who use their unique gifts to create a positive impact.
Welcome to Act to Impact. I'm Brandi DeVries, and today I'm sitting down with Amanda, a woman I've been honored to know for years, and someone who truly embodies what it means to take action and create change. Before we dive in, if you believe in using your gifts to make an impact, take action right now. Hit that follow button, leave a comment, or share this episode, because together we can reach more action takers like you. Let's jump into this episode with Amanda. Amanda, welcome to Act to Impact. You know I'm excited for you to be here with me because this is a long time coming. And you're someone who I feel so very blessed to have met over probably 6 years ago now through our involvement with Children's Cancer Research Fund and both being founding board members of SOAR Leadership Council. So I don't know, Amanda, if you remember this, but I kind of I like to introduce the guests with sharing how we know each other. So I don't know if you remember how we met.
It might have been at a pub crawl.
Yes, it was. We met at the charity bar crawl, 12 bars of charity that was taking place in Uptown. So Children's Cancer Research Fund, SOAR Leadership Council, it was our first year of being involved in that event as a way for us to get more money, to raise more funds for the emerging scientist grants that we were raising funds for at that time. And I remember I was wearing my green sweatshirt supporting CCRF, and I believe you were wearing a blue one for Make-A-Wish. Does that sound right?
You know what? I don't know. There might have been a few beverages that evening, but I know we were there to support a good cause either way. Yeah.
Yes. In my mind, I feel like you were there with Make-A-Wish. And I think I had asked you about what your involvement was with Make-A-Wish and that type of thing, which then you told me that your daughter was childhood cancer. And I think, did you guys get a wish through Make-A-Wish or something?
We were through Wishes and More. We
Maybe
did have
that's what it was,
a
Wishes and
wish
More.
opportunity, but yeah, through that other organization.
Okay. So it was probably through Wishes and More then. So, but then I remember that just spurred me telling you about the work that we were doing with SOAR Leadership Council. And we started talking about Izzy. And so, yeah, I think that was in 2000. It had to have been 2019 because, yeah, I think I was just a new mom kind of at that time. And yeah, but you weren't very far removed from Izzy's treatments at that time, were you?
No, she was diagnosed in 2018. It was that whole year that we kind of went through her journey. In 2019, we're finally doing things like going to, out and about again. But yeah, she
Yeah,
had just kind of finished things up. We're
that's what I
still,
really,
yeah, lots of follow up and that kind of thing over the years after that. But it did feel like we were getting to back to some sense of normal at that point in time.
and that's what I remember from that night that we met, that you were like, we have not been out for so long. And I think that you were even like, the twins were spending the night at somebody else's house or with a grandparent or
Grandparents,
something.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yep. That was a fun evening.
yes, but I'm so happy that we met at that event. But that's kind of where I want to start is with you sharing Izzy's story. So yes, that's where I want to start this conversation today, and why I wanted to have you on Act to Impact is to share Izzy's story, which we're going to get to in a moment. But I also wanted to say that I felt connected with you from that moment that we have met, because I really just got the sense from you that you are made for more. And I continued to see you show up and for you to live out that you are made for more. And that's something too that I like, that I have this feeling inside me too, that there are more things that I can do with my gifts and my skills for me to share them. And I see us both doing that a lot on social media and trying to build a community and build awareness. And now that we've collaborated too for a couple years with the Great Cycle Challenge, and we've been on the Dream Gala committee together as well, I think we've had a lot of fun raising awareness. And I feel like both you and I have been able to make an impact in this space. So, this I feel like is just another way that we can collaborate and do that together. So, with all that said, would you mind sharing Izzy's story?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm so happy to be involved, and I just love sharing Izzy's story because I think it is an opportunity to inspire other people, to give them hope, to just spread awareness for such an important cause. So, my daughter Izzy was diagnosed, as Brandy said, with a germ cell yolk sac tumor when she was had just turned 1. We were sort of navigating a few kind of oddities in just her health for about a month or so before that. And it all culminated in having some scans done and blood work and realizing that she had this germ cell yolk sac tumor, which is a pretty rare but highly treatable cancer. So we were very grateful for that, obviously. But she started chemo 3 days later. You never are prepared for it and you don't have time to process what's going on. You just jump in, right? And you do anything you need to do to help your child. And so, yeah, that was it back in 2018. We spent most of that year in and out of the hospital. She had inpatient chemo. So we pretty much lived there for the better part of like 3 to 4 months. And we would come home, but then she'd get a fever. And if you get a fever when you have like a port, you have to go back. And so we just spent lots of time doing that. And we were so grateful that her treatment was only going to be like 3 months. That didn't even feel real because I have learned about so many other cancers where treatment is like 3 years and, you just don't know what to expect. So after that first chemo protocol, we thought everything was good. We were enjoying the summer by that time as a family, going, to parades and doing kind of the typical thing that you do with 1-year-old twins. And in a follow-up appointment, we learned that it either didn't get all removed the first time or it came back. And so we had to go through another chemo protocol later that year in that fall. We finished up in the fall of 2018. And then, from there on out, we just proceeded with lots of scans, lots of follow ups, lots of blood work for the better part of a couple years. But she is now 2 years in survivorship care, which means she's past that 5-year mark plus one more year where she's not susceptible to like other cancers because of the chemo she had. We just monitor for late term effects at this point. We go in once a year and you honestly would never know. I mean, we're so blessed that she's healthy and just grateful for that. So, yeah, that's kind of what our journey was like.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, when Izzy started doing chemo treatments, it was 3 days after she was diagnosed and she had a port and that type of thing. How, at such a young age, to try to even explain to a 1-year-old what is going to happen to them or to prepare them for these doctor visits?
Yeah, there really isn't anything you can do to prepare a 1-year-old for that kind of thing. Unfortunately, there was lots of like, we had to hold her down. And, I just kept thinking about what kind of trauma this was going to do to my child. And I will say by the end of her journey and all the chemo, like as a 1-year-old, she was able to not like cry during those port accesses or various other things because she did get used to it, sadly.
Yeah.
But We did lean a lot on like the child life specialist in the hospital who would come in and distract her with toys or, fun things. But it was hard. Yeah, you can't really explain it. And she has a twin brother, and that was like so challenging because he knew something was different. But again, you
Mhm.
can't really explain it to him. So he just knew that we weren't all together a lot. But yeah, we navigated that in various ways, kind of found some tips and tricks and things like that. But it was a struggle.
You mentioned that you were worried about trauma, that some of that might cause later. Have you seen anything that makes Izzy anxious then with going to some of these yearly treatments that she does have to go to now?
Yeah, she definitely has some trauma. I mean, even for many years after going to the dentist was hard
Mm.
just because it was like a doctor in her space. Like she wouldn't sit in the chair. Now that she's 8, she can do all that stuff on her own and it's not an issue anymore. But things that are still hard are like strep tests and things like that. Like it's like I mean, you have to work her up and talk about it, like, and get her to comply, but it's it really is a difficult thing. The annual appointments, they don't do blood or any well, they do blood, and those are hard, but she's getting better just as she gets older. I think she realizes that, it's not as bad as it was, but there's been moments where at home where, like, a smell would trigger her and
Hmm.
remind her of the hospital, and she'll burst into tears. It's just random things like that you might not expect, but we have seen that happen.
How has Isaiah, as her twin brother, do you see him, like, trying to, like, hype her up or, be that cheerleader for her through these years when he notices that, "Oh, my sister is, like, hurting about this right now." What does he do? How does he react?
Yeah, we have had him rally to help her, like, take meds because taking meds for him is, like, no big deal, and so
Mhm.
we would, sometimes get him in her corner to help out, but yeah, they have a unique relationship. I wouldn't say he's the most, like I think there's other probably trauma and things like that where he felt like she was favored because of all this extra stuff we had to do with her, though he doesn't realize that that was not things we wanted to do. So there's been a lot of kind of navigating those emotions too as the sibling of the cancer survivor. So I would say he might not be always on the side of like, oh, I want to see Izzy do the best because he feels like through all of this, like he sort of, had, less time with us and just some of those things I think he kind of holds deep down too.
That's a good point. That's something that I don't feel yet that I've had a lot of parents come on to talk about is the other sibling. And what advice would you give to a parent then for helping to navigate some of those situations with a sibling that's involved in this as well?
Yeah, I think, what we tried to do when we were in the thick of it is just to find time where we could take turns and just spend one-on-one time with him. I think that really helped. Or just to try and do special things with him to really hype him up when it's all about him. But what I will say is there have been different organizations we've been involved with that really do things for the siblings too, or really
Mm.
include the sibling. And so that's been really nice because then he gets to participate and feel, like it's not just all about Izzy because of what she went through or that kind of thing. So we've appreciated that, just being able to do things as a family, through some of these different organizations that support childhood cancer families. So
Do you mind sharing the name of the favorite organization of your family that you guys are involved with that does that?
I would say Hope Kids, they're really good at including the whole family and siblings. And then we've also been involved with Team Impact. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they were matched up with like a collegiate level sports team. And so they always include Isaiah in everything we do and always encourage him to come to things. So that's been really nice.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. I'm sure too, as a boy, anything with sports, he's
Yeah.
probably like, I'm all in.
Yeah. Yeah. He loves it.
So, looking back to when Izzy was first diagnosed, what do you feel was the hardest part for navigating that journey as a parent? And how did you find the strength to keep going?
I think for us, the hardest part was because we were impatient and we both wanted to be with Izzy, to also hear from the doctors and just to stay updated on everything. We both chose to go to the hospital and just navigating that time like away from Isaiah. We did have such an amazing community, like grandparents and friends that would help out and stay with him. But just finding that kind of routine in the unknown was really a struggle. But I do remember one piece of advice that someone gave me was to have people help out when you're inpatient, because then it's more routine. When you go home, you never know when you might have to go back. So that was kind of nice. But I will say, yeah, just those family dynamics and navigating also work. Like we both kept working, and those struggles were challenging, but we managed. I think a lot of it came down to like our supportive community and also just having faith, I guess, having that help us kind of just keep going day after day and just trusting that, you know, we were going to have the right doctors and the right plans and the right treatment. And that really made a big difference for us.
What was something that worked to cheer Izzy up when she was going through those treatments since she was so young?
Anything, yeah, that was a distraction. We took a lot of walks in the wagon down the halls on the 7th floor at Children's Hospital. She loved that. She loved all the different like pet therapy, art therapy, music therapy that came into the hospital. So those were really nice distractions. We always said we were going to be the parents that never had like devices for our kids until our kid had cancer, and then we gave her an iPad. So that did help too, but child life and the toys and all that they can bring into the room were really helpful.
What is your dream for Izzy and kids like Izzy who are in survivorship?
I think my dream for them and other kids who enter survivorship is that they just have like the most minimal or no side effects from the treatments. Izzy's been, like I said, so blessed to not really have side effects so far. The next thing we have to kind of watch for is when she hits puberty, just because of the location of her tumor and the chemo she had. But just to have them and the families just, feel like their kids can be kids. There's so much that's kind of stolen from them when they're going through it, and the families. And so, when they hit that milestone of survivorship, I think it's just that they're healthy and can do whatever it is that they want to do.
Do you remember how you felt and where you were standing and what you were wearing, maybe even when you were like, oh my gosh, this is the moment? Like, we're celebrating Izzy entering survivorship. Can you tell us about that?
I don't know if I remember. I remember a few other moments. I
Okay.
remember the moment she had her port taken out because we made a really cute video and she did a little dance, and she was like 2 at this time, maybe 3. Maybe she was 3. I can't remember, but it was the cutest thing. In terms of survivorship, I think we waited and waited for that 5-year mark, like, and just prayed for it for a long time. It probably felt like just a normal day, and because honestly, there were so many times we'd go into appointments and we would not get the news we were expecting. So I think I learned along the way, and I don't want to sound cynical, but like not to get my hopes up, because there were so many times on her journey that we had to reassess what we were doing and kind of take another approach or get more scans. So when that 5-year mark came up for survivorship, I probably went into the appointment expecting the best, but like not, I don't know, that sounds bad, but not trying to feel too hopeful, but like realizing that it was 5 years out and we were probably going to be just fine. So I think that's another thing that's just a part of being part of this community. That's the reality, is like sometimes it's hard to like actually dream about
Hmm.
the future until you're there and living it. I will say now, like, we have no fears in this area really, and so that's great. I do feel really grateful for that, but those moments were hard when we would go into the appointments and just you don't know what you're going to walk away with.
Unfortunately, there are too many families that are struggling with similar journeys that your family was on. But what advice would you give to a parent who is just beginning this difficult path?
I think it would be to really not be afraid to lean on people around you. There are people who really want to help and would do anything to make it easier for you, whatever that might look like, but don't be afraid to ask for help or just accept the help. Sometimes you're not going to know what you need, but people will want to do something and they will just do that. And so I think really leaning on the community or finding organizations that support families like ours, because if you maybe you don't have a strong community or maybe your family doesn't live close to you, there are organizations out there who do this for that's their mission, and they can support you in different ways. So that would be my encouragement, is to seek out those organizations, and like the social workers at the hospital can help with that and point you in the right direction. I think those are really helpful and needed. And you shouldn't feel bad accepting that support.
Hmm. Yeah. You have turned your personal experience into a powerful mission, in my opinion, to support families facing childhood cancer. But what was that fireball moment or that aha moment that made you realize that you were made for more? You had these gifts and these experiences now that you could use those to really take action to support other families.
Yeah, so a couple years after Izzy was done with like the bulk of the treatment, and I was feeling finally like in a place where I'd processed what we had been through, and I just was feeling like I needed to kind of get stronger again, like physically and mentally.
Yeah.
I kind of started doing some of that stuff for myself. And I think it was in those days when I realized I could, make something good out of this, that I decided I really wanted to help other people do that. And just knowing that my pain, could be turned into purpose, and that I could share that story as a way to inspire other people, and Izzy's story and then my story to, about getting stronger. And so, I just started sharing kind of organically, and I really kind of found a passion for that. And it was just nice being able to, like I said, turn that pain into purpose, and just to connect with other people who had been through the same thing and be someone that they could talk to and that could listen and just give encouragement. And I've always been someone who likes to encourage other people. So doing it in this tangible way just felt really, really great.
Yeah. And what an amazing example you have been for Izzy and Isaiah, too, for them to see you get mentally stronger, physically stronger, to be able to be there for yourself and show up for them and for your husband, too.
Yeah, it is fun to They don't do it as much anymore, but when they were littler, sometimes they'd join me in my workouts and things like that. But now I just having that strength and be able to go out as a family and be active, I think that's like the best part of it all, right? We can go on long bike rides, and we can go, on walks or whatever. And it just feels great to be able to do that as a family and have the
Yeah.
strength to do that.
Yeah. I love that. Through your work with Children's Cancer Research Fund and the Great Cycle Challenge and some other initiatives that you've mentioned too, I really feel like you've built an incredible community of advocates too that are coming alongside you and are more than willing to jump in and help you hit some of those goals, big goals that you've put out there for yourself with some of these groups. So what has been the most rewarding part of bringing people together for this cause?
Well, I also plan events for kind of my day job as part of my job. And so I always say, like, the best part of it is just seeing everybody together rallied around, like, whatever it is that you're planning. So for Great Cycle Challenge and these other things that I've put together, I think just having everybody together, knowing that they're supporting such an important cause like childhood cancer research, I just love that so much. It's so much fun to put, hard work into something like that that really makes a difference. And then each year kind of pushing my goals a little higher.
Mhm.
Um, and then hitting those goals or surpassing those goals also feels really awesome. But I just really love like bringing people together for a mission and just seeing how that can just be a ripple effect.
Talk about a couple of the goals that you've hit recently, maybe with the Great Cycle Challenge or anything else that you are working on.
So the most recent thing I just launched is a kind of a fundraise your way campaign with Children's Cancer Research Fund for the Dream Gala. And I decided that this was a new thing they were trying this year. And I was like, oh, I might as well try it, right? So it's just a different way to fundraise, to share the story, on social media or however else you might want to share it. And so I wrote the story. The family we're featuring this year is another twin family, and it's a story I followed before I knew Izzy had cancer. And
Mhm.
so I had followed their story. So I just felt like I related to that family, and I just wanted to share that as part of this fundraising campaign. And so I set a goal of $2,000. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it makes a difference. Every little bit helps. And I made one post and I hit that goal. Made one post with this story and I hit that goal. And I just thought that was so cool. It's just so neat to see people come together.
Mhm.
And like my mom, who lives in Florida, shared this. And one of her friends at quilting gave her an envelope of cash to give me. Like, I've never met this woman. I think it's just so neat.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great story of, yeah, people coming together to support and because they see your passion in this and they hear your story about Izzy and also they see that how well she is doing now too. I feel like it brings hope to people.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah. So I see your gifts and how you're using them on social media and with other people to bring awareness to childhood cancer. But what words do you use to describe your gifts that you're using to make an impact?
Yeah, I was thinking about this when you shared this question. I think for me, it's just belief, like believing in yourself. I feel like that's grown over the years, as I've gotten stronger mentally, and just the belief that I can do, whatever's placed on my heart, and faith, and then determination. I don't give up usually. I'm not a quitter. And so I think those three things combined, I think just help me kind of remember why I do what I do, but also just to keep pushing forward and to encourage others to engage.
Mhm. Yeah, I think those are all very fitting for you. I can see that. If you could envision the future of childhood cancer and survivorship, what changes or breakthroughs would you love to have seen?
I think for me, what I would really love to see are safer treatments, some more survivorship stories, less diagnosis stories. And I think we're getting there with certain things, certain treatments, breakthrough research, trials, but I still feel like so much of what is used is harsh and it creates side effects. A lot of times kids don't make it, the treatments don't work, and that's the saddest part. But for me, I think those are the things like if we could just continue to, fund the research that can make these changes, that's my dream is to see those statistics improve.
And lastly, if you could provide one piece of advice for the first step that people can take to take action to support the pediatric cancer community, what advice would that be?
I think it is just to trust yourself and also to just start small. Like, don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to have some grand event that you're planning or, I don't know, some big thing you're taking part in. It can just be a simple sharing of a story. If you see someone's story that inspires you, just hit the share button. I mean, you never know what a difference that can make. Or just reach out to organizations that you might be inspired by and see what they need. I mean, I bet any nonprofit you reached out to would need volunteer help. So I think just starting small and not being afraid to just get your feet wet is probably the best thing you can do if you want to get involved in this work.
Perfect. I love that. Well, thank you for being here today, Amanda. It means a lot to me to have you on Act to Impact. So, where can people find you if they want to know more about and follow you and your advocacy work?
I do. I think you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Probably just search my name. We can maybe put in the notes my actual Instagram handle. I probably don't know it off the top of my head. It's made for more mama, but I don't remember where I put special characters.
Okay. I'll definitely
But
post in the
yeah,
show notes.
I'm social media and I like to share there.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you.
You've been listening to Act to Impact with Brandi DeVries. If this show ignited your fire and inspired you to take action to make an impact, please share this episode with a friend, leave a 5-star review, or write a review to let others know how the show impacted you. I can't wait to see the action you are taking to make an impact, and I'd love for you to share that with our community. Go ahead and tag me on social media as you are out making an impact in the world. Do you have a story to share and want to be a guest on Act to Impact? I'd love to connect with you.